Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So today's video I wanted to show you these 4 Elizabeth Craft Design stamp sets. I showed you in a recent video, I believe it was the Die Cutting Essentials magazine, that I had a commission in there creating cards using all 4 of these stamp sets, and I wanted to use one of these again and really just to show you something different that you can do and just how fabulous these stamps actually are. So the names of the stamp sets you have got kindness, sunshine, gratitude and respect, and each of those words do appear in the stamp set itself. They are A5 in size and you've got sort of a nice main image there, plus then you have some additional stamps in these sets, and you can purchase coordinating dies to go with all 4 of these as well, which just makes it so much easier for cutting out more of these sort of delicate stamps. So for today's video I'm going to be using this kindness stamp, and I'm also going to be pulling the sentiment off the sunshine, but we'll see that at the end. So I wanted to do something very different to what I did in my commission. I like to try and then use the products differently to what I do in the commissions. So I'm going to be using 2 products today that I'm not 100% sure I've actually created a video using them. I can't honestly remember, but we're going to give it a go today. So I'm going to take a piece of watercolour cardstock. I'm going to make sure that it's wide enough to stamp this floral image 3 times, and then I'm going to pull out my stamping platform so I can do a little bit of heat embossing and make sure that I get a really great impression. The watercolour card I'm using is from Creative Expressions. I shared this in a recent haul video, and I'm just kind of using this paper or this cardstock in different ways just to see how I feel about it. So far I am happy with how the kind of results that I'm getting. So I'm going to prepare my cardstock to begin with. So I'm using an anti-static powder tool, and that one is EK Success, and it just brushes over the powder onto your card, and it stops the embossing powder sticking to any static that you might have on your cardstock. So I'm actually stamping this in the Versamark Clear Sticky Ink, which is great for heat embossing, but I'm actually going to use black embossing powder. I wasn't 100% sure what colour embossing powder I was going to use to begin with, but I decided to do black. You can either do it this way and use a clear ink with black embossing powder, or you can just use a black ink with clear embossing powder. Either way will work fine, but I do find that using the black embossing powder, I don't do it very often, but you get a really nice sort of dark outline. I think it does give a nice finish. So I've got a piece of scrap cardstock here which is going to catch all of my excess embossing powder, and I'm just going to pour that over the image, and then I'm just going to tap off the excess. So you can see that I've stamped 2 here. So the easiest thing to do is position your stamp on one end of your cardstock, and then you can simply just flip over your card 180 degrees and stamp it on the other side as well. I did decide that I wanted to stamp this a 3rd time as well, because I do have that little bit of space in the middle, but I'm going to heat set this first of all just to make sure that I don't lose any of that embossing powder when I come to stamp that 3rd one. The heat gun that I'm using is by Wow. It does have a dual heat function on here. I tend to use number 2 mainly because I'm a little bit lazy and I want it to go as quick as possible. With that though, you do have a little bit of warping. It doesn't matter too much with what I'm going to do here. It really does depend on your project, but the best way to get the sort of best results with your heat embossing is the melting of the embossing powder is to make sure that you let it heat up for a little bit first of all, and that will sort of prevent some of the warping, and you can heat from the back as well. So I'm just repeating the process again. You see me there use my anti-static powder tool again, and it is crucial for any heat embossing to make sure that you use an anti-static powder tool of any kind. I will link to the one that I use in the description box down below, but I'll also put a link in for just the bag, which is just as good if you're looking for a beginner's tools and things. Either one will work perfectly fine. I've had the bag for a few years now. I only swapped over to this EK one was because it was starting to run out and I wanted something a little bit different. So I've just repeated the same process again. So again, I'm just melting that. So you know when your embossing powder has melted, because it goes from a kind of dull finish onto a nice shiny finish. And you can see the light just hitting it there where it has melted and gone nice and shiny. So these are the products that I'm going to be using today to kind of colour in these images, and like I said, I'm not 100% sure that I've used these in a video, but I've got about 5 or 6 of these and I just never ever reach for them. These are the Prism Glimmer Mist sort of sprays, and they have kind of a mica in there, so they have some nice shine powder in here, so you really do need to shake these up. I store mine upright and all of that powder then goes to the bottom, and you want to shake it up really well. It's got a little ball in there which does help to get that mixed in nicely. It's settled on the bottom so you can kind of see when it is mixed in properly. I would definitely recommend using some form of splat box for this, and you can see I've just got some paper towel in here as well. So I didn't want to have the colours mix too much together, so this is very much me just experimenting here. So I just took a scrap piece of card and I'm just using that as a barrier so it doesn't go too much onto the flower heads, and I'm just spraying that, and in between then I'm just taking off any excess spray that I've got on that little barrier there just onto the tissue that's in my splat box. So I'm going to do the same again then for the blue. So you can see that I'm trying to just separate the colours a little bit. Again, I just wanted a little bit of variation in here and not have everything kind of mixed together too much. I do really love the idea of getting the distress inks, the sprays, is it the spray stain I think they're called, and kind of using it because I did have a lot of fun. But with these, you know, the colours are extremely kind of bright in here, and then with that powder as well, I'd just be happy with the colours rather than with all of that powder in there. But you can see that I'm just trying to try not to mix the blue and the green together kind of too much, and just get that blue onto those flower heads. So this is kind of my first layer, so I'm going to blast this again with my heat tool. You want to be careful that you don't then burn your embossing powder by kind of holding this over it too much. I'm just kind of moving my heat gun very quickly and just trying to dry certain areas of this just so we can build up some layers. The other great reason to do the heat embossing to begin with is because it will create little wells, little pockets in different parts of the design, and it will help the colours not to run together. So whether you're ink smishing, whether you are using sprays like this, it's a great idea, especially if you're maybe a little bit more of a beginner. It just creates something a little bit easier to work with, like I said, because the colour doesn't kind of spread too much. So I added then that darker blue just into the centres. I was trying to get a little bit of depth in there. Again, this is where I wish then I had a darker green colour to add to those leaf sections. But I tried to keep it sort of in the centres there. And I did add a little bit more green again. So if you start to build up the layers and the colours a little bit, you can add a little bit more sort of depth and that, and you can use then a paper towel like I have just to help mop up some of those areas where you have got quite a lot of that liquid. Overall, I do really like how this comes out, and then when you look at it under the light, you can really see that shimmer, and it is quite beautiful. So this did kind of work how I wanted it to. It was quite messy. Unfortunately, I get a little bit of the colour on the rest of the card, which tends to be, is more sort of leaning towards the whites. So it does get a little bit messy, especially with that glimmer. So definitely leave it to dry. I left this to one side while I worked on the rest of my card, just let it dry. I then did put a paper towel over the top just to try and take any excess of the, you know, powder and the glitter and things off this. So just sort of be wary what you do have on your hands. So like I said, I'm going to leave this to one side and I'm going to work on the rest of my card. So this is a newer product here. So this is the Creative Craft Products, and this is the Diamond Embossing folder. And then I just pulled out some of the Creative Expressions Coconut White. I didn't end up using the embossing folder on my card. I just used the actual die, which we'll see here in a minute. There was one step using this embossing folder that I didn't actually do this time, which I usually always do, and I really wish that I had, is I didn't spray my cardstock lightly with a little bit of water. And what that does is it helps when it absorbs into your cardstock, it does kind of loosen those fibres a little bit, and it will help prevent your cardstock from cracking. So I did find that when I pulled my cardstock out of the embossing folder, it had cracked in quite a few areas. So if you do find that that happens to you, just spray it very lightly with some water, and it will sort of help soften those fibres and will help to add that impression into your cardstock. So I don't end up using the embossing folder. Again, it was because I liked the look of how it looked with just the die, but yeah, just maybe I would have if I'd got slightly better results with my embossing folder. So I'm going to pop that to one side, and then we can use then the coordinating diamond die that goes with this as well. Again, links in the description box down below. So again, I'm just going to hold this in place. I'm going to cut down my cardstock. I like to cut down my cardstock so I don't kind of waste too much of it, and so it does go through the die cutting machine a lot easier because I don't have excess cardstock in there. With this being a DL size as well, it just fits into the Gemini Junior plates. So I have a full size Gemini die cutting machine, but I use the Gemini Junior plates just more for convenience. But I do end up running this through a few times just to help get all of those pieces out of this, but I really love how this turned out. It's a really great basic die to have because you can just use it for your backgrounds, and it just adds interest. So I went with a white on white, and yeah, I just think it adds something to the background without taking the focus away from anything else. And because then my flowers are so colourful, you know, I really didn't want it to have to compete kind of with anything else. So I'm going to trim these down, and I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut these. I'm going to hold that in place with a little bit of washi tape here, and then I can run that through my die cutting machine. What I would say as well is once you are finished die cutting is to clean out your embossing folders. Just make sure there isn't any of that spray, or you know, the glitter and things from the spray sort of left over. So you can see just ever so slightly here in my embossing folder that I do have that in there. So I just use a baby wipe just to clean that off, and again, that's where it kind of gets on your hands a little bit. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the final card, hopefully not, but you know, it's something just to be careful with. So, and you can also see there on the die as well, it does have it has sort of transferred a little bit. So this is the thing I'd quite like to try then, like I said, the distress spray stains, because I don't think this would happen. I've never seen it when I've seen people use it in videos. I've never seen that happen, and it just seems to be a lot less messy, because to get the same result with that sort of glimmer on top, you could then just add some like glimmer mica powder and things like that. So that's where you can see that I've just used that paper towel just to try and take some of that whatever is left on the surface. So now we can get back to creating our card. So I've just got this single layer at the moment with this background. I'm trying to work out how I want to position my flowers, what kind of orientation I want to use. So I'm thinking of just having them sort of coming in from different sides and things. It just takes a moment to work out exactly how I want this to look. So with that kind of roughly laid out, I'm going to glue down my background. So again, there's many ways that you can do this. So I'm just going to use my glue here. This is the Crafter's Companion sort of fine tip glue bottle, and I've put in here some of the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, which I find great for really intricate pieces like this. You could use sort of double-sided adhesive sheets before you die cut. You could do this with foam, because I do end up die cutting more and stacking them together, but certainly with those adhesive foam sheets that would create the dimension. But this fits edge to edge with a DL sized card base, and again, I just think it's really subtle and really beautiful. So I did die cut that two more times, sorry. So I got 3 layers of the cardstock just to add some nice sort of subtle dimension on here. what you could do with this die as well, I mean, the possibilities really are endless, and I've got some ideas just as I am sort of editing this video, but I think you could paper piece with this really, really fantastically, because you could just die cut this from a few different colours of cardstock and paper piece the diamonds back in. That would be super, super easy to do. You can create really interesting backgrounds, and you could use this on top. Again, if you wanted to have a busier background and then just kind of frame it out, that would be really beautiful as well. So again, this is a great die. I think there was 4 of these DL sort of background dies in the collection that you can purchase. I really like this one again because I think the possibilities are endless, but items like this are really, really great for having in your stash, just so you can add that little bit of detail to the background, or like I said, sort of frame something really nicely. The options that you can do with a die like this really are endless. Okay, so now we are just finishing up with our last layer, and I really love this stacked look because again it adds that little bit of depth onto that background as well. So we can begin then to add our flowers. So I'm going to do this one at the bottom, and I think I have the 2 at the top. Yeah, just sort of hanging in, so they do sort of overlap a little bit, but again, and what I really like about this diamond background, it kind of looks like a trellis, so having these flowers, you could have flowers sort of climbing up it, I think would look beautiful as well. Again, it's just so many options, but I'm going to just take that same Nuvo adhesive and I'm just going to add that to the back again, so I've got it all over my fingers. So I'm just using that paper towel just to try and to allow the adhesive to stick to that trellis, and 2 then just to kind of take that off the surface. So I did put an acrylic block on there as well just to help that stick down, because even though I'm putting adhesive or glue all over the back of this flower, obviously the only bits it's going to stick to is that raised diamond background. So then we've got number 2 coming in from that left hand side, and then we can bring in number 3, and I'm going to add some foam to this one just for a little bit of dimension, and it's just nice where they are overlapping. The dimension I'm using is the Time for Tea Designs foam tape. This is the thicker tape, and I can just sort of cut the pieces off that I need to go all across our flower here. So once we've got the foam on the back of that, we can add this onto our card, and then any pieces that we do trim off, we can look at adding back on, coming in from the edges. So this is sort of more of a longer card. It is a little bit more of an in-depth card, I think, here, just with using those sprays and just really getting that background together. But I do think it is a really special card. I do absolutely love how this one turned out. The colours again, I think it's nice to pair that with just that plain white background. So you can see that I'm just trimming off those pieces there, and again, so that what I've trimmed off that top one I can add back in, and I did kind of place it just strategically so I could add it back in. So you can think about that if you end up having bits that you are trimming off, you can add that back onto other portions of the card. And if you see closely there, just on the inside, you can see where I got some of that glimmer spray just on the inside of the card. So next we can work on our sentiment. So I'm going to take the Sunshine stamp from the Sunshine stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, just using an acrylic block. And then I'm going to take another sentiment. This is from my own product line. This is the Paper Ink Stamp Ultimate Sentiment Builder. So we're going to stamp this just above, and it's going to read Sending You Sunshine. And this is what's really great about the sentiment builder, is that you can use it with so many other stamp sets to help build your sentiments, create bigger sentiments, and really kind of customize it to to the kind of sentiment that you want to read on there. There is a link in the description box down below over to my Etsy shop where you can purchase the stamp set, so do check that out. I did decide just to heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder, and again I used my anti-static powder tool on there to stop the embossing powder sticking where I didn't want it to, and then I'm just using my heat tool again to melt that. Then I'm going to pull out, again, this is a new die set. So this was a combo set that I showed you in a recent haul video. This is the DL Combo Sentiments. This is the die set here. I really love these, but I have struggled somewhat to find sentiments to fit in them because some of them are quite big. But I'm going to use this oval one here. It's got a little cross detail on there as well, which I do quite like. It just adds something a little bit different rather than having just normal kind of sentiments. I could have used the coordinating die for the sunshine wood and then just done a strip for the sending you, but again, I really liked you know, using these kind of shapes because it's got some interesting sort of factors on here. So I'm just going to pop that away, and then I didn't want to leave this white again because it would have blended in with the background. So I am going to take a distress ink and I'm just going to add a little bit of colour to this. Again, just to help it stand out a little bit. It does look nice with the white on white, but yeah, I just thought adding a little colour would be nicer, and I can curve that very slightly as well. So I'm just going to take a blending brush, and this is the fossilized amber here, and I'm just going to blend this all over the top. And because we use that clear embossing powder, my ink isn't going to smudge or anything like that, and that heat embossing is going to resist this ink as well. So if it was white, for example, you could just rub the top of it. Any residual ink that's led on top of that heat embossing, then you can just rub that away. So there we've got our sentiment, and again, I think that yellow just pops nicely with the colours of those flowers. I'm going to add a foam pad just to the centre of this, and it's just going to help me then to have the space to really curve this over. You've seen that I doubled up. I wanted to kind of have a little bit of dimension on here with that sentiment, so just sort of curling the edges of that just worked very nicely. So I really love how this card's come out. Again, like I said, a little bit more in depth, lots of different sort of elements coming together, but I do think it came together nicely. And then I was going to add some embellishments, as I usually do on my cards, and I decided to go for something a little bit different, but I think this did finish it off nicely. So I've got here, these are the Chloe Creative cards. It's like a pearl embellishment pack. So I've taken, I think this is the medium size here, and any of the exposed circles that we have got on this background, I'm just going to add them to the center. Now, if you wanted a really nice, clean and simple, elegant card, you could just have that background, that diamond background. You could add pearls or nouveau drops or any type of embellishment to that sort of crossed over section, and you could just pop a sentiment on there, and I think that would look really, really beautiful. So again, I'm just going in to the areas where you'll be able to see those pearls there, and adding them to those areas. So this card did come together really lovely. I love how this finished it off, and I do really love the card sort of overall. It came together so nicely. So that is going to be it for today's video. Like I said, I'll pop some links to the products that I've used in the description box down below. They are affiliate links, but the products will cost no extra cost to you, but I do earn a small commission. And you know, if you've got any sprays or anything like that, I do urge you to get them out and have a go. You know, because you just see what you can create with it, and kind of see it's a little bit different to just colouring them in with, say, like alcohol markers or watercolouring. It's just nice to do something a little different, and hopefully there you can see all of that shimmer from those sprays. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so you don't miss out on any future videos. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.